Listen, I got something for you today. I'm just going to throw this out there. It's going to be different. Every week this has been different. Every week this series has been different. Today's going to be totally different, just totally different. I'm going to be all over the place. That's really not any different. But today's going to be totally different. We're going to do something really cool in this sermon that you just wait for it, but we're going to get there. Welcome to week 4 of our series. Our theme for 2023. Somebody say our church. Somebody say our church. I hope you've got your bracelets. We're trying to give you stuff that's free. You need to grab your bracelet on the way out. I hope you've been in your reading plan where we're helping you read through the Gospels in 1 year. It takes 5 minutes a day. Somebody say, I got 5 minutes. Then all you need to do is just, if you don't have the reading card, stop by on the way out. One of the staff members at the tent will give you one of the reading cards that tells you every day what you need to read. It's 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. If we don't have 5 minutes for Jesus, then we were way too busy. And can I tell you something? And if the devil can't make you really, really bad, he'll make you really, really busy. And the reason why he makes you really, really busy is because then you will not be focused upon the business of God. That might be in this sermon a little bit later on. I'm going to just go ahead and say that. I don't know. But the birthplace of this series was basically because I've had people throughout the years come up to me and they'll say, Pastor, I just love your church. And I want to say it's not my church, it's our church. It's our church. And when I use the terms our or yours versus ours, I'm using those terms loosely. However, I'm not using the term yours in a personalized way. I'm not saying that you're saying, oh, this is my church. No. I mean almost the opposite of that. I mean that you're using the word yours in a directive way, like it's your responsibility. You see, when you live with a yours mentality versus an ours mentality, a yours mentality will keep the church at arm's distance. An ours mentality will enter in. A yours mentality will want to be served. An ours mentality will want to serve. A yours mentality will want to be given to. An ours mentality will want to give. Are you with me? A yours mentality will spectate. A ours mentality will participate. It's how God set up the church. It's koinonia. We've talked about koinonia, the Greek term koinonia, over the last several weeks. It's this togetherness, this like-mindedness, this collaborative effort, this group of people who joins together to accomplish the work of the kingdom. That's where John chapter 13, verses 1 through 17 is going today. You were 3 times as loud for being able to sit down than you were for celebrating God's word. John chapter 13, verses 1 through 17. Scary. Let me say this. Here's a conversation that Jesus is having. I'm going to do a lot of work before we ever get really where we're going. But let me set this up. Jesus is having this conversation with his disciples. It's a very important conversation. It's like a last conversation that he'll have with the disciples. But it's not just a conversation that he's having with the disciples. It's also a directive and a command and a conversation that he's having with us. Now, before I can get there, we're going to back our way into chapter 13. I'm going to ask you to do something else. I'm going to ask you to just, if you're in chapter 13, just scroll over and find verse 34. Verse 34. Find verse 34. Let me say this before I read verse 34. If you were here last week, you saw that we were talking about sacrifice. If you were not here last week, you missed it. Today is a sequel to last week. Last week was a sequel to the week before that. The week before that was a sequel to the week before that. So if you've missed any of these weeks, it's all right, but you ought not to miss, because sometimes you miss something God's got for you. But just in case you did miss, guess what? We love you so much, it's online. And it's free. But last week we were talking about sacrifice. If you'll remember, the disciples had 7 loaves of bread and they had a few fish, and there was a crowd of about 15,000 people who were hungry. And Jesus took what seemed like nothing and did something with it. The disciples didn't think it was really that much, but you know, when you put something that you might even call nothing in the hands of Jesus, Jesus turns the nothing into something. You see, sacrifice, Jesus is the multiplier of our sacrifice. Understand that. Jesus will multiply what you say. There has never been anyone who brought nothing to God that he didn't do something with it. It is impossible for God to do nothing. I don't care how nothing your nothingness is. I don't care how nothing you think your career is. I don't care how nothing you think your finances are. I don't care how nothing you think your marriage is. I don't care how nothing you think your dreams are. I don't care how nothing you think your future is. You bring what you call nothing and you place it in the hands of Jesus. Watch what he'll do with nothing. He'll turn it into something. So what is it that I want us to talk about today? Because we're going to go to the next level. What I want to talk about today is Jesus gives us this directive to share his love. But you cannot share the love of Christ without having the heart of a servant. Love and servanthood goes hand in hand. You with me? So let me read for you verse 34. I'm going to just read it off the wall. That's good. It's big on the wall. Verse 34, here's Jesus having a conversation with the disciples. He says, "A new command I give to you." At this moment when he says, "I'm giving you a new command," Mike, the disciples are note takers. They're all note takers. So they're grabbing their pen. He's giving us something new. Peter's over the side tapping Thomas and saying, "You better listen up." He's a note taker. You better take some notes. All of you note takers in here, the more notes that you take today, the bigger your master suite's going to be in heaven. I'm just telling you. So he says, "A new command I'm giving to you." And then he says something that he said before. He says, "Love one another. As I have loved you, so that you must love one another." Hold on a second. Go back to verse 34 again. "A new command I give to you, love one another." Then he says, "As I have loved you." In other words, I've been the example. In other words, do what I have done. Keep in mind, all 12 are there, and he's talking to them about what their responsibility is. He said, "I've loved you. Have I not loved you? Have I not served you? Then do what I've done. I have loved you, so you must love one another." Hold on a second before we go to verse 35. This is where it gets good. He says that this is what you're supposed to do. This is who you're supposed to be. You're supposed to love one another. The word that he uses for love here is agape. Agape love is not a love that's known for what it says. It's a love that's known for what it does. What it does. He said, "So I want you to do what I've done." And then he says something in verse 35. Watch this. Verse 35, he says, "By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." Hold on a second. The identifying characteristic of a Christ follower is established right here. You know, we tend to complicate things in the church world. You got to go to a certain church. You got to look a certain way. You got to dress a certain way. You got to do this. You got to do that. You got to do. Before you're going to be known to be a Christ follower. No. The identifying characteristic is, by this, everyone will know that you are my disciple. What? If you love one another. It doesn't say if you love those who are easy to love. It doesn't say if you love your mama and your dad. It doesn't say if you love the ones who love you. It doesn't say you can choose the ones that you want to love. It says if you love one another. If you love one another is not exclusive. It's an all-inclusive. If you love one another, it doesn't matter where they come from. It doesn't matter what they look like. It doesn't matter what background they have. It doesn't matter what skin color they have. It doesn't matter if they've been on this side of the tracks, on that side of the tracks, if they've done this, if they've done that. It doesn't matter if they fall on the left side or the right side, the red side, the blue side, or any side. If you love one another, This is how you will be known as a Christ follower. Love. Why? Because for God so loved the world. He didn't for so love one area of town. He for so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, to whosoever believes in him shall not perish but have everlasting life. For 1 John chapter 4 verse 19 said that we love because he first loved us. Do I have anybody in this place? So here he is. And by this, everyone will know, because you're serving the way I served, you're loved the way I loved. Peter would later expound upon this. He said that we've been called out. We're a chosen generation. We're a royal priesthood. We're a peculiar people. So here Jesus is establishing for them this identifying characteristic. He's saying how we love is noted by how we serve, because Jesus served. So your love, the action of your love, comes in the form of service. Are you with me? But he says this is a new command. When he says this is a new command, we're reading it as if he's going to say something brand new. But the ancient Greek term actually means that I'm going to give you something kind of fresh. Like today, you're getting a fresh word. I'm going to give you something fresh. Can I ask you something? How fresh is your love? How fresh is your love? Because he said, by this you will be known. Listen, he doesn't say by how much you love me. He doesn't say that. He had an opportunity to say that. But what he said is, you will be known not by how much you love me, but how much you make others aware that I love them. Ooh. That's a hard verse to live. So, we can come into church, but want to bless God and want God to bless us. But if you're going to take ownership of your faith, of the property of your faith, you can't just receive the love of Christ without pouring out the love of Christ. It's not good enough just to know. You got to act. Sam, thank you. I read something years ago that I've used. It was a research study. I think it was done by the Gallup research poll, where it says that the majority of Americans have a favorable opinion of Jesus, but an unfavorable opinion of the church. Could it be that the church has not exhibited the kind of love that Jesus is talking about in verses 34 and 35? Could it be that we haven't loved the way Jesus said love? He said, I have a new command for you. Let me go one step further. Are you more, how do I say this? Are you more committed to your personal opinion than you are his command? Are you more committed to your calendar than you are his command? Are you more committed to your convenience than you are his command? Are you more committed to being blessed rather than being a blessing? He said, because by this they will know. Back up to verse 17. Just back up. I told you we're going to back our way into the first part of this chapter. Verse 17 says something. Verse 17, Jesus says something to the disciples. Same room, same conversation. He says, now that you know these things. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you what? Hold on a second. How many of you in this place, you want to be blessed? You want to be blessed? Just raise your hand. Raise your hand real high. You want to be blessed by the Lord. You want to be blessed, okay? Most everybody in here has their hand up. I don't know what the rest of you are doing, but anyway. You want to be blessed. Hold on, watch this. Go back to that verse again. It says, no, that verse. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed. If you don't read any further, woo, you're going to be blessed. Now that you know these things, now that you know, you've got to love the way I loved. Now that you know it, you're going to be blessed. You would think, you would like, you would hope, you would expect that verse to stop right there, period. But it doesn't. There's a big if. If you do them. In other words, the knowledge that Jesus gave them would do them no good as far as blessing is concerned until the knowledge turned into application, until the knowledge became the doing, until the love was no longer talked about, but it was acted upon. Now that you know. I've worked long and hard to get here, so I'm going to go ahead and give you the title because I've never had to work so hard to get to a title before. Somebody look at your neighbor and say, now that you know. Now that you know. Sometimes you're looking for a blessing, but you're not living in the blessing because you're not acting on it. Ooh. Now that you know. Now let me back up into verse 1. Keep in mind, what happens in verse 1 and following is really an illustration about what we just read in verse 17 and verse 34. I kind of gave you the end of the story. Spoiler alert, if you will. I gave you how it plays out in the end, but Jesus teaches them something in the beginning. He illustrates love. Here's what he says. He says, it was just before the Passover festival. Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. He loved them to the end. He loved them in the good times. He loved them in the bad times. He loved them when it was easy. He loved them when it was hard. He loved them when they didn't love him. Ooh. He loved them to the end. There's a time stamp on this verse of Scripture. Go back to verse 1. There's a time stamp. How do I know? Because it says he loved them to the end. Okay, so we're talking about the end of his life. We're talking about the death on the cross. But there's also something else. It says Jesus knew that the hour had come. Some of your translations say that the time had come. I need you to understand something about that phrase. It is not talking about chronological time or chronos time. It is talking about kairos time. There's a difference. Chronos time or chronological time means that, Jesus looked down at his watch and said, it's 9 o'clock. I got to tell you, the time is here. No, that's not what happened. Chronos time is like tomorrow morning you have an appointment at 10:30. That's a chronological time at 10:30. Kairos time is a moment that is God ordained. It's a moment that is inspired by grace. It's a season that God will walk you into. What he's saying is the time, the Kairos moment had fully come. This time had come. This moment had come. This God ordained moment. Something was about to happen. A shift was about to take place. I need somebody in this place to understand something. You're about to walk into a Kairos season. You're about to walk into a moment that God has ordained for your life. You've been praying over something. You've been asking over. Let me tell you something. The same way, Lord have mercy. I need you to understand something. Jesus is in this place today. Listen, Jesus knows your name. Your name is on his heart. So he's sitting up with God the Father at the right hand, and he's saying, I know him. I know him. His name is John. Her name is Jan. And today they need a victory. Today they need a blessing. Today they need salvation. Today they need hope. Today, this moment, right now. Listen, I need you to understand something. The Kairos moment that God has for your life is about to be poured out from heaven. Can I tell you something? Some of you in this place, and I don't know who this is for, but you don't see value in your life. You think your life is just dirt. You think your life is rubble. You think your life is unvaluable. But can I tell you something? Your life is so valuable that God sent his son, and Jesus loved you so much and served you with love so much that he died on a cross for you. Greater love hath no man than to lay down his life. Verses 2 through 6. It says, the evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray him. Verse 3, Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power, and that he had come from God and was returning to God. So he got up from the meal and he took off his outer clothing and he wrapped a towel around his waist. After that, he poured water into a basin and he began to wash his disciples' feet, drying them with the towel that was wrapped around him. Let me spend a few minutes painting the picture that's articulated here. Within 24 hours of the time that verse 1 is written, Jesus will die on the cross. Within 24 hours. Within 24 hours, Jesus will say the words, "It is finished." The last 24 hours, the last few hours that he has alive on earth, he chooses to spend those hours with those whom he loves most. Those who have been around him for 3.5 years, those who have witnessed every miracle, those who've witnessed every nuance, those who've seen everything that he's done, those who've seen him spit on the ground and make some mud and heal a blind dude, those who've seen him touch lepers whom you're not supposed to be near, those who've seen him walk on water and freak out over it. Those who've seen him feed the thousands with a few fish and a few loaves. Those who've seen him calm the raging storm. Those who've seen him. And as he's spending time with them in the final moments and the final hours of his life, he's trying to show them and teach them and make sure that they understand what love looks like. Keep in mind, he's thinking to himself, this is my last opportunity to have communication with them on this side of my earthly ministry. And so what does he do? He takes off his outer robe. He wraps a towel around his waist. He grabs a basin, fills it up with water, and he begins to wash the disciples' feet one by one, by one, by one, by one. A hush fills the room the same way a hush fills this room. Why? Because Jesus shouldn't be doing what he's doing, because a rabbi doesn't do this, a teacher doesn't do this. The only person who should be washing feet in this environment would be the lowest servant in the room, and Jesus is not that. Or is he? I want to give you four things that will help you with loving the way Jesus loved. 4 things, very simple, but yet profound. Very simple for you to live. If your heart, here's the first thing, if your heart is struggling to love others, ask Jesus to help you. There are people in this room that will betray Jesus, but yet Jesus is still passing out love. There are people in this room that will forsake Jesus, but Jesus is still loving them. So here Jesus begins to wash their feet. The disciples are leaning on a table that's called a triclinium. A triclinium is a U-shaped table that's about the height of a coffee table that has pillows scattered around the outside edge of it so that the disciples can kind of lean on their side, lean on the table, and their feet would be out as far from the table as possible. Why? Because their feet were nasty. They had some nasty feet. They didn't have a fresh pedicure. It was just nasty. Why was it nasty? It was not like walking on these paved streets that we have today. Mike, it was nasty. They had to walk through some stuff. Y'all know what I'm talking about? They had to walk through it. They had to walk through that stuff. Some of that stuff, that word y'all use a lot, that stuff, they had to walk through it. Those streets were nasty. There was not indoor plumbing. Those streets were nasty. So here, when you come into the house and you lean against the triclinium and your feet are out, if your feet are going to be washed, which they should be in that environment, the lowest servant in the room would begin to wash your feet. But in this case, Jesus is the one. And everybody's saying, you shouldn't be doing this. And that's not what you're supposed to be doing. But Jesus is showing them how to serve. He's showing them how to love. In fact, Jesus is not talking about washing the disciples' feet. It's not like he says, okay, I'm going to illustrate this. Peter, you come over here. I'm going to show you something right here, right now. Okay, you wash his feet, and then you wash his feet, and then you wash his feet, and you wash his feet. And I'm going to talk you through it. No. He's not talking about love. He's acting on love. He's not talking about washing their feet. He's actually washing their feet. Luke's gospel captures this story, and Luke's gospel tells us that the disciples on the way into the house, they're saying, well, which one of us is the greatest? Which one of us disciples got it going on? Which one? Who's the greatest amongst us? And then when they get inside the house, Jesus, who is the greatest, shows them how to be the least. What blows me away is that within 24 hours, Jesus will utter the words, it is finished. He will take his last breath. And if there's anybody in the house who should be being ministered to, it would be him. But yet in this most difficult season of his life, he is ministering to someone else. And we find it hard to give someone a smile when we're having a bad day. I get an image of Jesus washing feet to teach them something, but really to show them his loving goodness. I get this glimpse of the great I am in the room with the towel around his waist. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords in this moment, showing how much he loves them. Showing them how he's healed others, showing them how he's loved others, showing them how he's been there, showing them how to serve people who are in need. Scripture verse after scripture verse, story after story where it talks about the compassion that Jesus has for others. Even when Jesus finds out about John the Baptist, his family member who's been killed, it says that Jesus tries to pray and he's crying out to God, but then he sees the needs that are around him, and the Bible says he has compassion on them. I see how he's needing to be loved in that moment, but yet he's loving in that most difficult moment. I see with the cross looming large in the background, but yet in this moment he's wanting to be their victory. He's wanting to be their example. He's wanting to shout out and show them love in this moment. I'm here to tell you, God in this moment will heal you, in this moment can deliver you, in this moment will love you, in this moment, even though, listen, even though you've been at times away from him, he's never away from you. Even at times you may not have loved him like he loves you, but he will never leave you nor forsake you. Why? Because the great I am is in the house. Where am I going? So here's Jesus showing them love. Not talking to them about love, but showing them love. So I've got to ask you something. Rather than ask you, let me just say it. You can't, in your walk with Christ, just come to church and wanting a blessing from God. That cannot be the extent of your relationship with God. At some point in time, you've got to graduate to the next level and put the towel around your waist and begin to say, I'm going to be involved in the work of God. God, show me a way that I can help somebody else. God, show me a way that I can be involved in the kingdom work. God, show me how I can pour out your love upon others today. God, show me where I can serve today. Show me where I can be involved today, because God, that's what I want to do. I want to show you something. Can I show you something? last year in 2022. Today we've got the Epi Awards. Somebody say the Epi Awards. I came up with that on the fly. Just saying. But last year we had, I think it was 25 winners, volunteers. We have many, hundreds of volunteers in our church, servant leaders. And last year, every month, we choose one or two. I think it's two every month, whom are the You're It servant leaders for the month. So we did this in the first service. Here in the second service, you received an email. You got a notice from us that you needed to be here today. You step up and stand up and just come on right up here right now. For those of you who were here in the first service and some of you are back for the second service, thank you. Thank you. You've already gone through this drill, so you should be a little bit quicker. This church, the work that God does in our community, the kingdom work that he does could not be done were it not for people like this, people like you. So I want to take this opportunity to honor some people today. We did this in the first service, and I want to be able to honor some people today in this service. So first, how cool is that trophy? Thumbs up. You're it. Somebody look at your neighbor and say, you're it. You're it. These are people who said, you know what? I may not have time. I may not feel like it. I may be burned out. I may have a lot going on this week, but yet they served. They served. Maybe even sometimes they're serving some people that they don't even like. I don't know. What I am trying to say is, you remember number one is, if you're having trouble, it's a struggle for you to love, ask Jesus for help. Amen. Tim Huggins is our group coordinator. Tim Huggins, thank you. You're It winner for 2022. Tim is my brother. Tim is a man who helps us, he and his wife, upstairs in production, but also runs our groups. So if you're involved in a group, it's because of him and his willingness to be a servant leader. If you're not involved in a group, it's not because of him. Thank you, Tim. Sabrina is a winner, a recipient of a 2022 You're It. You're It. Teresa Horn, listen, works in our child care all the time, like all the time. So about every Sunday. We got to thank the Lord for Teresa Horn. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, Teresa. Sarah Thornton. Sarah. Sarah is so helpful in so many different ways. Sarah's even helpful during the week sometimes here, and I'm so thankful for Sarah's involvement. Let me see that one right there. I want to give these two together. Can I do that? So these two I'm giving together because they are the only two on stage that are, it's a married couple. Just making sure. Stacy and John Prevet. How many of you are thankful for Stacy and John? Stacy and John work with our kids and a bunch of other stuff around here. Stacy, I love you. You're so awesome. You are awesome. John, I love you, man. John is one of the greatest encouragers that I have in this church. There's never a week that goes by that John doesn't encourage me. And what I know is that John encourages me when I know that John needs to be encouraged. You're like Jesus, my friend. You are like Jesus. Eileen, you lean. Eileen, everything Eileen does has got a smile on her face. I mean, everything. Mike Hussey serves in so many different ways around here. Listen, Mike Hussey is a servant. There is nothing that Mike Hussey is not willing to do. That's what I love about Mike. Mike is on our leadership team here at our church. He's on the board. He's one of our board members. But more than just being a board member, he'll also grab a broom. Man, he's got a servant's heart. Mike, I love you, brother. Thank you. Luke Williams. Luke plays about every instrument we have. Luke is always here. Luke is involved. Luke is an awesome testimony for Jesus Christ. But more than that, he's an awesome testimony for teenagers because Luke is just a teenager. Can you believe that? Come on. Luke, y'all give it up for Luke. Kent, my man Kent. Kent, who works with our food bank and is here just about every Tuesday and Thursday to help serve those who come, who are hungry, who might need clothes, who whatever the case may be. Kent is a true servant leader who's been so helpful to us here. Thank you, Kent. We love you, brother. Stephanie. With a smile on her face, repping Epicenter over there. Yes, Stephanie, thank you for all of your willingness to serve and the things that you've done. And you've always done it with a gracious smile as well. There's a few of y'all that just smile all the time. Look, they're smiling right now. You see what I'm saying? Thank you, Stephanie. What would it be like? What would it be like if we walked around every day like on our tiptoes, just like looking for opportunities? Like, I want to, God, show me today. Let me see with your eyes. Let me touch with your hands. I want to be involved in your kingdom work today. Give me an opportunity to be involved. Listen, every day this man right here gets up at a time that God's not even awake, 3 a.m. Gets ready, goes to work, walks for an hour, and he prays. God, show me what you need me to do. Show me what you need me to do today. Show me what you need. What would it be like if we lived that way? What would it be like? How would the kingdom be impacted if we said, you know what? We're going to serve today because God called us to be marked as his Christ followers by how we love one another. Verses 6 and following. Let me read this. I'm going to wind this thing down. I told you I've got 4 things. You realize I've only hit 1. Somebody on the front row said, yeah, I'm telling you. It said he came to Simon Peter, who said to him, Lord, you going to wash my feet? My feet are nasty. On the way in here, I stepped on some stuff. Huh? What did Jesus say? Jesus replied, you don't even realize now what I'm doing. But later you will. You'll understand it later. No, said Peter, you shall never wash my feet. Jesus answered, unless I wash you, you have no part with me. Then Peter said, then not just my feet, but my hands and my head as well. This same Peter later on, after Christ would ascend the throne in the first part of the book of Acts, him and John are on the way to the temple at about 3 p.m. It sounds like when you read the story that it's a chronos moment because it's 3 p.m, but in fact, in reality, it's a kairos moment that just happens to be time-stamped. Because at that moment, there is an invalid who's outside of the temple who says, alms for the poor, and he makes eye contact, if you will. He makes eye contact with Peter. Sometimes we ignore the need that's in front of us. We won't make eye contact with it because then we'll have to do something about it. And we won't make eye contact with it because if we don't do something about it, then we're going going to feel bad about what we're not doing. Y'all know what I'm talking about? But the Bible says that Peter saw him, made eye contact with him, and Peter said to him, silver and gold I don't have. But what I do have, I freely give to you in the name of Jesus. The thing that Jesus was teaching, now Peter was living. So what is Jesus doing? He's teaching them to put others first. So if you're having a struggle with loving others, ask Jesus for help. The second thing is put others first in your day. Think about that. Put others first. You have to begin placing others first in your day. Look at verse 10 through 15. Watch this. Verse 10 through 15. Just hang with me. Jesus answered, those who have had a bath need only to wash their feet, and their whole body is clean, and you are clean, though not every one of you. For he knew who was going to betray him, and that was why he said not everyone was clean. Verse 12, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and he returned to his place. And do you understand what I've done for you? Do you understand? You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that is what I am. Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done. Somebody say, now that you know. Now that you know. What I'm trying to say is put somebody first. Put somebody else first. Try it. When you go to the store and there's a mom who's struggling with kids, let her go before you at the checkout line. You got a neighbor who needs a yard mowed, then mow it or hire somebody. You see a need. You are identified as a Christ follower by your love for one another. Third. So in verse 17, go to verse 17. Verse 17. Let me show you this. Verse 17. I'm going to close right here. Now that you know these things, which you really know, that I'm not closing right here because I got one more. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Hold on a second. Put the third thing up. The third thing. Listen to God's lead. So when he gets to this place, Mike, in this conversation, he's like, I need you to listen up. I need you to listen up. Put verse 17 up. I need you to listen up. Guys, this is my last opportunity. I need you to hear this. Now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. You got to follow his lead. You've got to follow his lead because he will lead you. But you have to listen in order to follow his lead. Knowing it's not enough. Doing it is where the blessing's at. Last but not least, declutter your calendar. The reason why some of you do not see the opportunities that God is giving you because your calendar is so full you can't keep up now. So you are not looking at seeing the opportunities that God has for you because your calendar is so full. Why don't you try to remove some things off of your calendar so that you can live the things that God is asking you to live? Because once you start doing that, you'll see how some of that other stuff that you've just filled your calendar with absolutely makes no sense. It's not important for your daily good. It's not important for your daily health. It's not important for your spiritual health. It's not important for your mental health. If you do not declutter your calendar, you will see, even if you do see opportunities that God gives you, there'll be an inconvenience because it's just one other thing you cannot fit into a calendar that is already too full. So you'll leave it, you'll go around it, you won't do it, and then you'll miss out on the blessing that God has. You're blessed if you do this. Good Lord, this is some good preaching right here. I'm just saying. You remember I said earlier that busyness, if the devil can't make you really, really bad, he'll make you really, really busy so that he can rob you of the business of God.